Welcome to a place where love doesn't always mean safety, and secrets never stay buried. Tonight's story begins with a perfect engagement until silence starts to feel like control, and questions lead somewhere they were never supposed to go. What happens when the man promising forever is hiding an entire life? When every I love you was part of something calculated, something darker? This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about unraveling a carefully built illusion, piece by piece. Hidden families, false identities, lies so deep they almost feel real. And when the truth finally surfaces, it doesn't just break hearts, it transforms them. Because sometimes the person who was meant to be loved becomes the one who exposes everything. At first, the silence felt like love. There was always an explanation, gentle, patient, almost rehearsed. Family was complicated. Distance made things difficult. Timing just never seemed right. The words came wrapped in warmth, in reassurance, in promises that someday everything would fall into place. And for a while, that was enough. A ring on the finger made it easier to ignore the gaps. But love isn't supposed to feel like being kept at the edge of someone's life. It isn't supposed to come with locked doors and unanswered questions. Still, every time doubt crept in, it was softened with affection. Late-night calls, soft apologies, quiet reassurances that no one else had ever been trusted this way before. It felt special. Until it didn't. The first crack appeared in something small. A name mentioned once, then quickly brushed aside. A call that ended too abruptly. A moment where the expression shifted, not into anger, but into something colder, controlled. That's when the pattern started to show. There were rules, though never called that. Don't ask too much. Don't show up unannounced. Don't dig into the past. Every boundary came disguised as care, as protection, as if the outside world was the danger, not the secrets being kept inside. And then came the realization that the life being shared wasn't complete. There were missing pieces, whole chapters that didn't exist. No childhood stories that added up, no photos, no spontaneous mentions of family. Just fragments, carefully selected and tightly controlled. It stopped feeling like love and started feeling like being managed. The truth didn't arrive all at once. It never does. It slipped in quietly, piece by piece, until it became impossible to ignore. A conversation overheard, a document seen when it wasn't meant to be, a truth that didn't just explain the silence, but made it terrifying. There was never going to be an introduction, because there was already a family. Not distant, not complicated, hidden. And in that moment, every I love you turned into something else entirely, something calculated, something cruel, something that had never been love at all. That was the moment silence stopped feeling like protection and started sounding like betrayal, waiting to be exposed. The questions never stopped. Only the answers did. Every time something didn't add up, there was always a way to smooth it over. A quick explanation, a change of subject, a look that made it seem like asking more would somehow break what was already fragile. For a long time, it felt easier to believe than to push. But silence leaves traces. It started with a last name that didn't match a document left carelessly open. Not a typo, not a mistake, something deliberate. When confronted, there was laughter, too quick, too light, followed by a story that almost made sense. Almost. That almost refused to settle. Digging deeper didn't feel like curiosity anymore. It felt like survival. Small details began to line up in ways they shouldn't. Addresses connected to places never mentioned, old records that told a completely different story, and then a photo, one that wasn't meant to be found. A wedding photo. Not recent, not old enough to be irrelevant, just enough to sit perfectly in the timeline that had been carefully built with lies. The truth didn't explode, it unraveled. The man who spoke so convincingly about a future had already built one with someone else, a wife who wasn't gone, wasn't distant, wasn't anything like the vague excuses that had been offered. She existed, fully, publicly, and not alone. There was a child. The kind of truth that changes everything in a single breath, every memory twisted into something unrecognizable, every promise revealed as part of a performance. Even the smallest moments, the laughter, the quiet nights, the plans, felt rehearsed in hindsight, like scenes from a life that was never real. But the deception ran deeper than just a hidden family. The name, the background, even parts of the past had been reshaped, identities adjusted, histories rewritten. It wasn't just a lie, it was a construction, a carefully designed version of a life meant to deceive, to control, to keep everything just believable enough. And the most terrifying part wasn't how well it was hidden, it was how easily it had been believed. There was no confrontation that day, no screaming, no tears, just silence, this time chosen. Because some truths don't need to be argued, they need to be used. And from that moment on, every secret uncovered stopped feeling like pain and started feeling like power, waiting for the right moment to strike. Trust doesn't break all at once. It fractures quietly, in moments that seem insignificant until they aren't. Every memory started to feel altered, like looking at a photograph that had been edited so carefully the changes weren't obvious at first glance. The laughter felt too timed, the affection too precise. Even the way he listened, attentive, calm, understanding, now carried something unsettling beneath it. It wasn't real. The man who once felt like safety now felt like strategy. Each new discovery didn't just reveal something hidden, it erased something that had been believed. Late nights that were explained as work were spent somewhere else. The phone calls that ended abruptly weren't accidents. The tenderness, the vulnerability, the promises about a shared future, they weren't spontaneous emotions. They were tools. And the worst part wasn't just the lies, it was the intention behind them. There was a pattern to everything, a rhythm, just enough distance to raise questions, followed by just enough affection to silence them. Doubt would rise, and he would be right there, soft voice, steady eyes, carefully chosen words, pulling everything back into place. It was never chaos, it was control. The realization didn't come with anger at first. It came with something colder, the understanding that every moment of closeness had been calculated. Every secret wasn't just hidden, it was protected with precision. Even love had been weaponized. Looking back, there were signs everywhere. The way certain questions were redirected, the way certain topics made him too calm, too composed. No one is that controlled unless they're hiding something they've practiced hiding, and he had perfected it. What made it unbearable wasn't just that there was another life, another family, another truth running parallel to this one. It was knowing that both were being managed at the same time, balanced, maintained, as if people were nothing more than roles to be handled. The engagement ring no longer felt like a promise. It felt like proof, evidence of how far the illusion had been allowed to go. But illusions only survive when they're believed, and that belief was gone. Every word he spoke now sounded rehearsed. Every touch felt hollow. Every future he described collapsed under the weight of what was already known. He thought the truth would destroy everything. What he didn't understand was that it had already done something far worse. It had erased him completely. And from that emptiness, something far more dangerous took its place. Clarity with no room left for mercy. Pain has a way of sharpening everything. At first, it felt like drowning in it, every lie replaying, every memory twisting into something unrecognizable. But pain doesn't stay soft forever. It hardens, it focuses, and eventually, it begins to think. That's when everything changed. There were no more tears, no more questions, just quiet observation. Every move he made became predictable once the illusion was gone. The same patterns that once kept the truth hidden now made it easier to see exactly where everything was weakest. And weaknesses are where things break. He didn't know anything had changed. That was the advantage. The same trusting silence, the same careful listening, the same acceptance he had grown comfortable with. It all stayed in place, because the most dangerous shift is the one no one sees coming. The evidence had already been gathered. Messages, records, names, dates, enough to destroy not just the story he had built, but the life he had been balancing so carefully between two worlds. All that was left was timing. It happened on a night that was supposed to mean something, a carefully planned evening filled with the same charm, the same rehearsed affection. He spoke about the future again, about plans, about forever, as if those words hadn't already been stripped of meaning. This time, there was no interruption, just patience. Because the truth doesn't need to be forced when it's ready to collapse on its own. One moment, everything looked exactly the way he wanted it to, controlled, perfect, safe. And then it wasn't. A single shift, a single reveal. Not shouted, not dramatic, just undeniable. The kind of truth that doesn't ask for attention because it commands it. The kind that leaves no room for explanation, no space for manipulation, no chance to rebuild the illusion. For the first time, he had nothing to say. No carefully chosen words, no calm deflection, no control. Just silence. The same silence that had been used to hide everything now turned against him, exposing every layer of deception in front of the one audience he never wanted to face. The hidden life, the fabricated identity, the betrayal that ran deeper than anything he ever thought would come to light. And in that moment, there was no anger left, just certainty. Because revenge was never about destruction. It was about truth being placed exactly where it could no longer be ignored. And as everything he built collapsed in front of him, one thing became painfully clear. Some secrets don't ruin lives when they're exposed. They ruin the person who tried to keep them hidden. If this story pulled you in, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay with us, because some truths are too powerful to stay hidden, and the next story might be even more shocking.